Ancient Rome rules we still follow for no reason. Most people think ancient Rome is dead and gone. Ruins, statues, dusty history books, and stories about emperors who ruled 2,000 years ago. But the truth is much stranger. Ancient Rome never really disappeared. In fact, Rome is still quietly running your life in ways you've probably never questioned. Every day, you follow rules that were invented for Roman citizens who lived without electricity, without cars, without the internet, and without modern science. Some of these rules once made perfect sense. Others were created to control crowds, enforce social hierarchy, or simply make life easier in a brutal empire. And yet, here we are, still obeying them. From the way we divide time, to how we dress, sit, vote, punish criminals, and even how we think about authority, ancient Rome left behind a rulebook that the modern world never fully threw away. Some of these rules survive because they work. Others survive simply because nobody bothered to question them. And once you notice them, you start seeing Rome everywhere. Let's start with one of the most obvious, and most pointless, rules we still follow. Rule 1. The 7-day week. The 7-day week feels natural. It feels scientific. It feels inevitable. But it's none of those things. The 7-day week exists largely because of Roman tradition mixed with superstition and astrology. Early Romans didn't even use a 7-day week at first. They used an 8-day market cycle called the nundinal cycle, where every 8th day was a market day. Farmers would come into the city, business would happen, and then everyone went back to work. So why did 7 days win? Because Romans became obsessed with planets. By the late Roman Empire, astrology was incredibly popular. Romans believed the 7 visible celestial bodies, the Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, controlled human fate. Each day was assigned to one of these heavenly objects. That's why we still have names like Sunday, Monday, and Saturday today. There was no biological reason for 7 days. No astronomical necessity. No scientific advantage. It stuck because emperors liked it, priests approved it, and people got used to it. Today, we structure our entire lives around this Roman superstition. Work weeks, school schedules, holidays, productivity cycles, burnout. All of it tied to a system invented by people who thought planets controlled their luck. And there's no real reason we still follow it, except habit. Rule 2. Wearing ties and formal clothing. If you've ever worn a tie and wondered why it exists, you can blame ancient Rome. Romans believed clothing was a symbol of moral character and social order. What you wore told everyone who you were, how important you were, and how much respect you deserved. The toga wasn't just clothing, it was a political weapon. Only Roman citizens could wear the toga. Slaves, foreigners, and women were excluded. The toga was uncomfortable, heavy, hot, and impractical, but that was the point. If you could function while wearing it, it meant you were disciplined, respectable, and worthy of authority. Fast forward to today. Suits, ties, formal shoes, and stiff dress codes serve the exact same purpose. They aren't comfortable. They aren't efficient. They don't make people smarter or more capable. They exist to signal obedience, seriousness, and hierarchy. The tie itself evolved from ceremonial neckwear meant to show restraint and submission to social norms. It literally restricts your neck. There is no functional benefit. No warmth. No protection. And yet, people are denied jobs, promotions, and respect for not wearing one. This is pure Roman logic. Suffering equals legitimacy. Rule 3. Sitting while eating is civilized. In many cultures around the world, eating on the floor is normal. Healthy. Social. Comfortable. But in Western societies influenced by Rome, sitting at a table became the proper way to eat. Romans believed posture reflected morality. Sitting upright at a table was considered civilized, controlled, and disciplined. Eating while standing, squatting, or reclining, unless you were elite, was seen as primitive or lower-class behavior. Ironically, the richest Romans reclined while eating, while slaves stood. So the rule wasn't about health or manners. It was about class. Today, eating properly at a table is still associated with respectability. Children are corrected. Adults are judged. Cultural practices are mocked. All because Romans decided that furniture equals civilization. Rule 4. Handshakes as trust signals. The handshake feels universal. A sign of respect. A symbol of agreement. But it comes straight from Roman custom. Romans used handshakes to show that neither party was holding a weapon. Grasping forearms was a way of checking for hidden daggers. It was a survival gesture in a violent society. That context no longer exists. And yet, we still judge people based on the strength, duration, and confidence of a handshake. Entire business deals hinge on it. First impressions are formed in seconds. A weak handshake? Untrustworthy. A strong one? Confident. There is absolutely no rational basis for this today. But Roman instincts still run deep. Rule 5. Law is more important than justice. One of Rome's greatest legacies is its legal system. And also one of its biggest problems. Romans believed law was sacred. Once written, it was more important than context, compassion, or common sense. This made administration easier across a massive empire, but it also led to absurd outcomes. People were punished not because something was wrong, but because it was illegal. Modern legal systems still follow this logic. Judges often say, "My hands are tied." Laws are enforced even when they clearly cause harm. Technicalities override truth. Paperwork outweighs people. This mindset comes directly from Rome. It made sense for controlling millions of subjects. It makes far less sense in a world that claims to value justice over obedience. Rule 6. Authority must look serious. Roman leaders were obsessed with appearances. Senators wore specific colors. Magistrates carried symbolic objects. Emperors surrounded themselves with ceremony, silence, and rigid behavior. Smiling too much made you look weak. Joking made you look unserious. Sound familiar? Modern leaders are still expected to act presidential, professional, or statesmanlike. Expressing emotion is seen as a flaw. Humor is risky. Warmth is often mistaken for incompetence. This has nothing to do with leadership ability. It's Roman theater. Rule 7. Public punishment as entertainment. Romans loved public punishment. Executions, floggings, humiliations, all done in front of crowds. Not just to punish criminals, but to remind everyone who held power. Today, we don't use arenas, but we do use media. Public shaming. Courtroom spectacles. Viral scandals. Mugshots broadcast for clicks. Careers destroyed before trials even end. The technology changed. The instinct didn't. Rome understood something uncomfortable. Fear is an effective tool of control. And we still use it. If Rome taught the world anything, it was how to make habits feel permanent. Once a rule became normal, Romans rarely questioned it again. That mentality survived long after the empire fell, and today we live inside systems that exist mostly because that's how it's always been done. Let's keep going, because some of the most ridiculous Roman rules are hiding in plain sight. Rule 8. The calendar is a mess because of Rome. Our calendar is one of the clearest examples of Roman stubbornness. The months don't make sense. September means 7th month, but it's the 9th. October means 8th, but it's the 10th. February is too short. Leap years feel like a glitch. This isn't accidental. It's political. Early Roman calendars were chaotic. Months were added, removed, or stretched depending on political needs. Priests literally changed the calendar to extend allies' terms in office or shorten enemies' time in power. Then Julius Caesar stepped in. He reformed the calendar to stabilize Rome, but even his version was a compromise between astronomy, tradition, and ego. Months were renamed after emperors. Lengths were adjusted to honor authority, not logic. August has 31 days not because of the sun, but because Augustus wanted his month to be as important as Julius Caesar's July. We kept it. Even though modern science could easily create a cleaner, more logical system, we still use a calendar shaped by Roman vanity and political manipulation. Rule 9. Standing for authority figures. Why do people stand when a judge enters a courtroom? Why do students stand when a teacher walks in? Why do crowds rise when certain officials appear? Rome. Standing was a sign of submission and respect in Roman society. Slaves stood. Citizens Saturday. Senators reclined. Emperors were elevated, literally and symbolically. Standing wasn't polite. It was a power signal. Today, we pretend it's about courtesy. But its roots are hierarchical, not respectful. Standing says, "You are above me." There's no functional reason for it. No practical benefit. It survives because authority likes being physically acknowledged. Rule 10. Silence equals respect. Romans believed silence was obedience. In Roman courts, speaking out of turn was considered disrespectful, regardless of truth. Senators were expected to wait their turn, follow protocol, and never disrupt the structure, even when decisions were corrupt or harmful. That belief still shapes modern institutions. Students are told not to talk back. Employees are warned against questioning leadership. Citizens are criticized for being too loud or disruptive. Rome valued order over truth. And so do we. Rule 11. Bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy. Rome perfected bureaucracy. Forms. Permits. Registrations. Census records. Tax documentation. Identification papers. These systems made empire management possible, but they also created distance between people and power. The average Roman couldn't argue with paperwork. Rules were rules. Officials hid behind procedure. Sound familiar? Modern bureaucracy often exists to protect institutions, not help people. Processes are slow, confusing, and rigid. Mistakes are punished even when intent is harmless. This isn't efficiency. It's Roman control logic. Rule 12. Voting that feels fair, but isn't. Romans invented the illusion of popular participation. The Roman Republic had voting assemblies, but votes weren't equal. Wealthy citizens voted first. Poor citizens voted last, often after outcomes were already decided. Technically, everyone voted. Practically, power was concentrated. Modern systems often mirror this structure. Voting exists. Participation is encouraged. But influence is uneven. Money, access, and status shape outcomes far more than individual voices. Rome understood something uncomfortable. Letting people feel involved is often enough to keep order. Rule 13. Work as moral identity. Romans believed labor defined character, but only certain kinds of labor. Manual labor was for slaves. Intellectual labor was for elites. Leisure signaled power. Overworking was not admired unless you were poor. But discipline, appearing busy, was virtuous. Today, productivity culture is a direct descendant of this thinking. People are judged by how busy they look, not by outcomes or well-being. Rest feels guilty. Burnout is normalized. Rome didn't glorify health. It glorified endurance. Rule 14. Punishment over rehabilitation. Roman justice focused on deterrence, not reform. Punishment was meant to be seen. Pain was meant to be remembered. Prisons weren't for rehabilitation. They were holding cells before punishment. Modern systems still struggle to move beyond this mindset. Many punish without fixing root causes. Public fear outweighs long-term solutions. Rome wasn't interested in second chances. That belief lingers. Rule 15. Masculinity as control. Roman masculinity was rigid. Emotional restraint. Physical dominance. Authority over others. Men were expected to be controlled, commanding, and detached. Vulnerability was weakness. This model still influences expectations today. Emotional expression is discouraged. Strength is defined narrowly. Empathy is often undervalued. This isn't biology. It's Roman social engineering. Rule 16. Architecture that intimidates. Roman buildings were designed to overwhelm. Massive columns. Elevated platforms. Cold stone. Perfect symmetry. The goal wasn't comfort. It was intimidation. Courthouses, government buildings, and institutions still follow this style. High ceilings. Hard surfaces. Distance between authority and people. Rome understood how space controls behavior. We copied it. And this is still only half the list. By now, a pattern should be clear. Rome didn't just conquer land, it standardized behavior. Once something worked for control, efficiency, or appearance, it became tradition. And tradition is harder to overthrow than armies. Let's keep going, because some of Rome's most stubborn rules are so normal today that questioning them feels strange. Rule 17. Education means sitting still and obeying. Roman education wasn't about curiosity. It was about discipline. Students sat quietly. They memorized texts. They repeated lessons aloud. Questioning teachers wasn't encouraged, it was disruptive. Education existed to produce obedient administrators, soldiers, and lawyers, not independent thinkers. Sound familiar? Modern classrooms still rely heavily on this Roman model. Students sit in rows. One authority speaks. Silence is rewarded. Compliance is mistaken for intelligence. This system made sense for training imperial officials. It makes far less sense for nurturing creativity. Rule 18. Age automatically equals wisdom. In Rome, age was authority. Older men held power. Youth obeyed. Experience was respected regardless of competence. This belief still shapes leadership structures today. Seniority often outweighs ability. Younger voices are dismissed. Earn your place becomes a barrier, not a guideline. Age can bring wisdom, but Rome turned it into entitlement. And we still follow that logic. Rule 19. Marriage as a social contract, not a choice. Roman marriage wasn't about love. It was about alliances, property, and status. Families arranged unions to strengthen influence. Personal happiness was secondary. Divorce was common, but only when politically convenient. Modern marriage ideals claim romance, but many legal and social expectations still reflect Roman logic. Financial ties. Family pressure. Status signaling. Gendered roles. We inherited the structure even if the story changed. Rule 20. Gender roles as law. Rome enforced strict gender roles. Men governed. Women managed households. Deviating from these roles invited suspicion and punishment. While societies have evolved, echoes remain. Career expectations. Emotional rules. Social judgment. These norms aren't natural. They're ancient policies. Rule 21. Military discipline as everyday life. Roman military discipline shaped civilian life. Punctuality. Hierarchy. Uniformity. Orders without explanation. Modern workplaces still mirror this structure. Chain of command. Rigid schedules. dress codes, performance metrics. Efficiency matters, but blind discipline isn't the same as effectiveness. Rome blurred that line. Rule 22, lines and queues. Standing in lines feels normal, fair, civilized. Rome popularized queuing for public services, grain distribution, and legal matters. Order prevented riots, but also reinforced control. People learned to wait, comply, and accept delays without protest. Today, we queue for everything. Even when systems are inefficient, we accept waiting as normal. It's not patience. It's conditioning. Rule 23. Public records define identity. Romans were obsessed with records. Census lists, citizenship documents, property registrations. If it wasn't recorded, it didn't exist. Modern life follows the same principle. Birth certificates, IDs, numbers, files. Identity reduced to paperwork. This system works, but it also erases complexity. Rome valued order over individuality. Rule 24. Silence in sacred spaces. Roman temples enforced quiet, seriousness, and ritual behavior. Silence wasn't spiritual, it was controlled. Modern religious and institutional spaces still follow this rule. Noise equals disrespect. Movement equals disorder. But reverence doesn't require silence. Rome just preferred control. Rule 25. Time discipline. Romans introduced structured schedules. Public clocks. Bells. Fixed hours. Time became something to obey, not experience. Modern anxiety around productivity, lateness, and schedules stems from this shift. Time stopped being natural. It became a ruler. Rule 26. Public shame as correction. Romans believed shame corrected behavior. Insults, mockery, public exposure. Today, cancel culture, social punishment, and moral outrage function similarly. Public humiliation replaces dialogue. Rome knew shame was powerful. We still use it. Rule 27. Cleanliness as morality. Roman bath culture linked cleanliness to virtue. Dirty meant uncivilized. Modern judgments still tie hygiene to moral worth, ignoring context, culture, or access. Clean isn't always moral. It was just Roman branding. Rule 28. Size equals power. Big buildings. Big armies. Big ceremonies. Rome believed size impressed obedience. Modern nations still measure power through scale. Bigger offices. Bigger budgets. Bigger displays. Subtlety rarely wins. Rule 29. The myth of progress through order. Romans believed order created progress. Control produced stability. But order without flexibility creates stagnation. Many modern systems struggle because they prioritize structure over humanity. Rome optimized for empire, not for happiness. At this point, it should feel unsettling. Not because Rome existed, but because it never really left. Empires usually fall when their ideas collapse. Rome collapsed physically, but its rules survived by becoming invisible. They embedded themselves so deeply into daily life that we stopped recognizing them as choices. They started feeling like reality itself. And that's Rome's greatest trick. Why these rules still exist. The real reason these Roman rules survived isn't efficiency, morality, or wisdom. It's familiarity. Once a rule becomes routine, questioning it feels disruptive. Rome understood this better than any civilization before it. They knew that if people repeated a behavior long enough, it stopped feeling imposed and started feeling natural. That's why so many Roman rules don't defend themselves logically. They don't need to. They feel normal. The comfort of ancient authority. There's a strange comfort in following old rules. If something has existed for thousands of years, it feels validated by time. People assume longevity equals correctness. But Rome wasn't designing systems for human happiness. Rome was designing systems for control. Stability mattered more than fulfillment. Obedience mattered more than truth. Order mattered more than flexibility. And many modern institutions still inherit that priority list without realizing it. The illusion of "that's just how things are." One of Rome's most powerful legacies is the phrase "nobody questions." That's just how things are. Why do we dress uncomfortably to look professional? Why do we organize time the way we do? Why do buildings intimidate instead of welcome? Why does silence equal respect? Why does authority demand seriousness? Why does law often override compassion? Most people don't know the answer. They just know it feels normal. That feeling is Roman. Rules that no longer serve anyone. Some Roman rules still function reasonably well. Law codes. Infrastructure logic. Basic civic organization. But many others survive without purpose. They don't make us healthier. They don't make us kinder. They don't make us wiser. They simply maintain momentum. And momentum is not the same as progress. Rome's biggest success was psychological. Rome didn't just build roads. It built expectations. It trained people to accept hierarchy, to respect symbols over substance, to equate discipline with virtue, to confuse order with justice. Once those ideas took root, Rome didn't need to rule directly anymore. The system ruled itself. The modern world isn't Roman, but it's Roman-shaped. We live with technology Rome couldn't imagine, but many of our behaviors belong to a pre-electric empire. We manage humans like subjects. We design spaces to intimidate instead of support. We value appearance over function. We punish visibility instead of addressing causes. These aren't inevitable features of civilization. They're inherited habits. What happens when we finally question them? The moment a rule is questioned, it weakens. Why must work look a certain way? Why must authority behave a certain way? Why must time control us instead of serve us? Rome's rules only survive when unexamined. Once examined, many collapse instantly. The future isn't about rejecting Rome, it's about outgrowing it. This isn't about hating ancient Rome. Rome was brilliant, ruthless, creative, and deeply human. It solved enormous problems with the tools it had. But those tools were designed for an empire, not a global, interconnected, emotionally aware world. Civilizations don't evolve by preserving every rule. They evolve by choosing which rules still deserve to exist. The question Rome never asked. Rome never asked whether its systems made people fulfilled. It asked whether they made people manageable. Today, we finally have the luxury of asking a different question. Does this rule actually serve us? If the answer is no, then it's not tradition. It's inertia. The silent legacy. Every time you stand when told. Every time you accept a pointless formality. Every time you follow a rule you can't explain. You're not just obeying modern society. You're echoing Rome. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Even after everything already covered, ancient Rome still hasn't finished revealing itself. Some of its most persistent rules are the ones we barely notice at all, because they live inside habits, instincts, and social expectations we mistake for common sense. These are the quiet rules. The ones nobody announces. The ones that feel so obvious that questioning them feels awkward. That's exactly why Rome won. Rule 30, authority is always right, until it isn't. Romans trained citizens to respect authority by default. Magistrates, generals, senators, these figures were assumed to be correct simply because of their position. Challenging authority wasn't encouraged. It was tolerated only after failure became undeniable. Modern societies still operate this way. Leaders are trusted first, questioned later. Systems are defended until they collapse. Whistleblowers are ignored until damage becomes impossible to hide. This reflex isn't rational. It's Roman conditioning. Rule 31. Uniformity equals fairness. Rome believed fairness meant treating everyone the same, regardless of circumstance. Uniform laws. Uniform punishments. Uniform expectations. But sameness isn't fairness. Modern systems still struggle with this idea. Policies are applied equally even when people start from completely unequal positions. Context is ignored for efficiency. Rome valued simplicity over nuance. And we inherited that flaw. Rule 32. The center matters more than the edge. In Rome, power flowed from the center outward. Rome itself mattered more than provinces. The closer you were to the center, the more rights you had. This mindset still shapes modern cities, economies, and media. Capitals dominate. Urban voices outweigh rural ones. Central narratives drown out local realities. Rome taught us to look inward first. Rule 33. Loud dissent is dangerous. Romans tolerated quiet complaints, but feared loud dissent. Public protests threatened order. Noise meant instability. Today, peaceful disruption is often framed as chaos. Protesters are criticized for being too loud, too inconvenient, or too aggressive, even when issues are legitimate. Rome didn't fear injustice. It feared disorder. Rule 34. Titles matter more than function. Romans loved titles. Consul, praetor, tribune, senator. The title mattered more than the work. Modern workplaces still obsess over titles, ranks, and labels. People with impressive titles gain respect even when their contribution is minimal. Others do vital work without recognition. Rome cared deeply about appearance. So do we. Rule 35. Suffering proves worth. In Rome, endurance was virtue. Pain meant strength. Comfort was suspicious. This belief still infects modern thinking. Hustle culture. Overwork. Sleep deprivation as a badge of honor. Rest feels lazy. Ease feels undeserved. This isn't productivity. It's ancient pride. Rule 36. Complexity means importance. Roman systems were intentionally complex. Legal language was dense. Procedures were confusing. Complexity kept power out of reach. Modern institutions still hide behind jargon, technicalities, and endless processes. Complexity discourages challenge. Simple systems are easier to question. Rome knew that. Rule 37. Public order over private happiness. Rome prioritized public stability above individual well-being. As long as society functioned, personal suffering was acceptable. Modern systems still echo this logic. Mental health is acknowledged, but often sacrificed for productivity, efficiency, or economic goals. Rome never optimized for joy. Neither do many systems today. Rule 38. Tradition is its own justification. Perhaps Rome's most powerful rule of all. We do this because we've always done it. Romans worshipped ancestors and customs. Breaking tradition wasn't innovation, it was disrespect. Modern societies still defend outdated practices using the same logic. Longevity becomes proof of value. But time doesn't make rules wise. It just makes them familiar. The hidden cost of never letting go. Every outdated Roman rule we still follow carries a cost. Lost creativity. Unnecessary stress. Rigid thinking. Human systems forced to behave like machines. None of this is inevitable. It's inherited. Rome's final lesson. Rome teaches us something uncomfortable but essential. Civilizations don't collapse because they change too much. They collapse because they refuse to change what no longer serves them. Rome adapted militarily, politically, and territorially, but it clung to social rules long after they stopped helping. That's the danger of tradition without reflection. The choice Rome never had. We do. We can keep rules that work, question rules that don't, and discard rules that survive only because they're old. That doesn't erase history. It honors it. Because the point of learning about Rome isn't to live like Romans. It's to avoid becoming them again. By now, ancient Rome shouldn't feel ancient anymore. It should feel current, familiar, uncomfortably close. Because the real proof of Rome's influence isn't in museums, it's in everyday behavior most people never question. This is where Roman rules stop sounding historical and start sounding personal. Rule 39. Work hours that ignore human biology. The standard workday, fixed hours, rigid schedules, little flexibility, doesn't exist because it's healthy or efficient. It exists because Rome needed predictability. Roman labor schedules were designed around control, not performance. Workers were expected to adapt to the system, not the other way around. Energy levels didn't matter. Mental fatigue didn't matter. Showing up mattered. Modern office culture still follows this logic. People are judged for being late even when productivity is high. Sitting at a desk is valued more than results. Presence replaces effectiveness. This isn't modern professionalism. It's Roman attendance culture. Rule 40. The serious face of power. Leaders are still expected to look stern, controlled, and emotionally distant. Smiling too much feels unserious. Expressing doubt feels weak. This expectation comes directly from Roman leadership ideals. Authority had to look unshakable, even when it wasn't. Today, leaders who show emotion are criticized as unstable. Those who appear cold are labeled strong. This isn't strength. It's performance. Rule 41. Dress codes that don't match the job. People dress formally for jobs that don't require formality. Shoes that hurt. Clothes that restrict movement. Rules about appearance that have nothing to do with performance. Rome did this first. Appearance signaled obedience and status. Function came second. Modern dress codes still separate respectable people from unserious ones, based on fabric, not ability. The toga never really disappeared. Rule 42. Silence as professionalism. In meetings, classrooms, and institutions, silence is rewarded. Speaking up is risky. Disruption is discouraged, even when ideas are better. Rome valued quiet compliance. Modern workplaces often do the same. Innovation is welcomed in theory, but punished in practice if it challenges hierarchy. Silence still feels safer than truth. Rule 43. Punishment before understanding. When something goes wrong, modern systems look for someone to blame before they look for causes. Rome did this deliberately. Blame reassured the public that order still existed. Today, individuals are punished for systemic failures. Scapegoats replace solutions. It feels decisive. It solves nothing. Rule 44. Authority symbols still control behavior. Uniforms, badges, titles, platforms. These symbols change how people behave instantly. Voices lower. Posture changes. Compliance increases. Rome mastered symbolic power. The fasces, the toga, the elevated seat. Modern society still responds to symbols more than substance. That instinct never evolved. Rule 45. Productivity as moral value. Being busy is still treated as proof of worth. Rest requires justification. Doing nothing feels wrong. Rome admired visible effort, not internal balance. Today, exhaustion is normalized. Burnout is expected. Rest is earned, not needed. This isn't ambition. It's inherited guilt. Rule 46. Complex systems that protect themselves. When systems fail, they rarely admit it. They add layers. Committees. Reviews. Policies. Rome responded to problems by expanding. Bureaucracy, not simplifying it. Modern institutions do the same. Complexity shields responsibility. The system survives. People adapt, or suffer. Rule 47. The fear of disorder. Order is often valued more than fairness. Peace more than justice. Calm more than truth. Rome believed disorder was the greatest threat of all. Today, people are told to be patient, polite, and calm, even in the face of clear problems. The goal isn't always resolution. It's quiet. Rule 48. Tradition as identity. Many people defend outdated rules because they feel personal. Challenging tradition feels like an attack on identity. Rome fused tradition with loyalty. To question customs was to question Rome itself. That emotional bond still exists. People defend rules they've never examined because those rules feel like home. Rule 49. Control disguised as normality. Rome's greatest success wasn't force. It was normalization. When control feels normal, it no longer feels imposed. That's why these rules survive. Not because they are right, but because they are familiar. The uncomfortable realization. Most modern frustration isn't caused by technology, speed, or change. It's caused by ancient systems trying to govern modern minds. We're running 21st century lives on first century assumptions. And the tension is showing. Rome's shadow today. Rome no longer has emperors. But it still has habits. Habits decide behavior long after laws fade. And until those habits are questioned, Rome remains quietly in charge. For nearly 2,000 years, Rome's rule survived because they were never directly challenged. They were absorbed, normalized, and defended as civilized behavior. But something unusual is happening now. For the first time since Rome fell, large numbers of people are quietly stepping away from its rulebook. Not through rebellion, but through refusal. Rule 50. Authority must never be questioned. This rule is cracking. People are questioning leaders openly. Institutions are expected to explain themselves. Titles no longer guarantee respect. This would have terrified Rome. Romans tolerated debate only among elites. Today, scrutiny comes from everywhere. And while this makes systems uncomfortable, it also exposes how fragile unquestioned authority really is. Respect is slowly shifting from position to behavior. That's a post-Roman idea. Rule 51. Work must dominate life. For centuries, Roman discipline shaped labor culture. Long hours. Fixed schedules. Endurance as virtue. That rule is weakening. People are demanding flexibility. Remote work. Mental health days. Results over presence. Rome measured loyalty by attendance. Modern life is starting to measure it by impact. Rule 52. Dress codes equal professionalism. The visual markers of Roman hierarchy are fading. Suits are disappearing. Ties are optional. Authority no longer requires costume. When people perform well without traditional uniforms, the illusion collapses. Competence doesn't need a toga. Rule 53. Silence is politeness. The expectation of quiet obedience is being challenged. People speak up in meetings. Students question teachers. Employees challenge decisions. Rome would have called this disorder. But progress often sounds noisy. Rule 54. Emotional control equals strength. Roman masculinity demanded restraint. Emotion was weakness. That rule is eroding. Vulnerability is no longer automatically dismissed. Emotional intelligence is valued. Leadership is beginning to include empathy. This shift doesn't make societies weaker. It makes them more human. Rule 55. Tradition is untouchable. One of Rome's strongest defenses is finally failing. People are asking why traditions exist, not just honoring them. Some traditions survive scrutiny. Many don't. And that's not disrespect. That's evolution. Rule 56. Productivity defines worth. The Roman guilt around rest is losing power. Doing nothing is slowly being reframed as recovery. Rest as maintenance, not laziness. This is a radical break from Roman endurance culture. And it's long overdue. Rule 57. One way fits everyone. Roman systems favored uniformity over individuality. Modern systems are beginning to accept flexibility. Different learning styles. Different work rhythms. Different definitions of success. Rome optimized for sameness. We're learning to optimize for people. Rule 58. Control must be invisible. Ironically, as people recognize control mechanisms, they lose effectiveness. Once you see a rule as inherited rather than necessary, its power fades. Rome depended on invisibility. Awareness is its weakness. The resistance Rome never expected. Rome expected rebellions. It didn't expect disengagement. People aren't overthrowing systems. They're opting out. Working differently. Living differently. Defining success differently. That's harder to suppress. Why this transition feels uncomfortable. Breaking Roman rules feels wrong at first. Guilty. Lazy. Disrespectful. That discomfort isn't intuition. It's conditioning. Rome trained obedience so well that freedom feels suspicious. The end of automatic obedience. We're entering a phase Rome never planned for. A world where rules must justify themselves. Not by age. Not by tradition. But by usefulness. That single shift changes everything. Rome's final hold is psychological. Rome no longer controls land, armies, or law. It controls instincts. And instincts can be unlearned. Slowly. Unevenly. Imperfectly. But once a rule is seen clearly, it never feels the same again. When Roman rules begin to fade, the change isn't dramatic at first. There are no parades. No declarations. No clear moment where one system ends and another begins. Instead, life slowly starts to feel lighter. Not easier, but more honest. Life without automatic hierarchy. In a world less shaped by Rome, hierarchy still exists, but it has to earn its place. Authority becomes conditional, not permanent. Leaders are respected because they help, not because they stand higher. Titles matter less than behavior. Symbols lose power unless backed by competence. This doesn't create chaos. It creates accountability. Rome feared this kind of balance because it couldn't control it. Work that fits humans, not the other way around. Without Roman discipline culture, work bends around people instead of forcing people to bend around schedules. Productivity becomes outcome-based, not appearance-based. Rest is built in, not stolen. Energy cycles are respected. Creativity isn't treated like a disruption. Work stops being a moral test. It becomes a tool. Education that encourages curiosity. Roman-style education trained obedience. A post-Roman world trains understanding. Students are allowed to question without punishment. Learning adapts to minds instead of forcing minds into rows. Mistakes become information, not failure. Rome produced administrators. This produces thinkers. Authority without intimidation. Buildings stop trying to scare people. Institutions become accessible instead of imposing. Transparency replaces ceremony. Clear language replaces legal fog. When power isn't hiding, it doesn't need stone walls and elevated seats. Rome relied on intimidation because it didn't trust consent. Time that serves life. Without Roman time discipline, schedules become flexible frameworks rather than rigid rulers. People stop apologizing for being human. Productivity ebbs and flows without shame. Time returns to being a resource, not a weapon. Deadlines still exist, but they stop defining self-worth. Social order without fear. Rome maintained order through fear of punishment and shame. A post-Roman system leans toward prevention and understanding. Problems are addressed early. Public humiliation loses its appeal. Rehabilitation matters more than spectacle. Fear becomes a last resort, not the foundation. Identity beyond records and labels. Without Rome's obsession with documentation, people stop being reduced to numbers, files, and categories. Records still exist, but they stop defining worth. Human complexity is allowed again. Masculinity and strength redefined. Roman masculinity valued control and dominance. A post-Roman idea of strength includes empathy, adaptability, and emotional awareness. Strength stops meaning silence. It starts meaning stability. Tradition as choice, not obligation. In this world, traditions survive because they add value, not because they are old. People keep what works. They release what doesn't. This doesn't erase culture. It refreshes it. Order without rigidity. Rome believed order required stiffness. But living systems thrive on flexibility. A post-Roman society allows variation without collapse. Differences don't threaten stability, they strengthen it. Uniformity stops being the goal. Resilience does. What feels strange at first? Ironically, life without Roman rules feels uncomfortable at the beginning. Too quiet. Too flexible. Too informal. That discomfort isn't danger. It's unfamiliar freedom. Rome trained people to associate control with safety. Letting go feels like risk, even when it isn't. The biggest change of all. The biggest difference isn't external. It's internal. People stop asking, "Is this allowed?" and start asking, "Does this make sense?" That single question dismantles centuries of inherited obedience. Rome's legacy, finally understood. Rome was never evil. It was efficient. But efficiency without humanity creates systems that outlive their usefulness. Understanding Rome doesn't mean rejecting everything it built. It means knowing when to stop copying it. The quiet revolution. No empire announces its final influence. It fades when people stop believing its rules are inevitable. And that's what's happening now. Slowly. Unevenly. Quietly. Rome isn't being defeated. It's being outgrown. When old systems loosen, they don't leave a vacuum. Something always replaces them. The difference now is that the new rules aren't being imposed from above. They're emerging from lived experience. Not designed for empire. Designed for people. Rule 1 of the new era: justification over tradition. Rules are no longer respected just because they're old. They're respected if they work. People ask why before how. Longevity stops being proof of value. Traditions are evaluated, not worshipped. Rome demanded obedience first. The new rule demands explanation. Rule 2: flexibility is strength. Rome believed rigidity created stability. Experience is proving the opposite. Systems that adapt survive longer. Workplaces, schools, and communities that bend don't break. Flexibility isn't chaos, it's resilience. The strongest systems are the ones that change. Rule 3: authority is conditional. Respect is no longer automatic. It's earned continuously. Titles open doors, but behavior keeps them open. Authority that refuses scrutiny loses legitimacy quickly. Rome treated power as permanent. The New World treats it as provisional. Rule 4: productivity serves life. Work stops being a measure of moral worth. Efficiency exists to support life, not consume it. Rest, recovery, and balance become necessities, not luxuries. This rule directly contradicts Roman endurance culture. And it's one of the most liberating changes of all. Rule 5. Transparency replaces intimidation. Institutions are expected to explain themselves. Plain language replaces ritualized complexity. Access replaces distance. Trust replaces fear. Rome hid power behind symbols. The new system exposes it to sunlight. Rule 6. Education prioritizes understanding. Learning shifts from memorization to comprehension. Questions become tools, not threats. Curiosity becomes valuable. Failure becomes part of the process. Rome trained obedience. The future trains thinking. Rule 7. Diversity strengthens systems. Uniformity once made Rome manageable. Diversity makes modern systems resilient. Different perspectives aren't disruptions, they are safeguards. Variation becomes a feature, not a flaw. Rome standardized humans. The future adapts to them. Rule 8. Emotional intelligence is leadership. Leadership expands beyond control. Empathy, listening, and self-awareness become strengths, not weaknesses. Emotional literacy improves decision-making rather than undermining it. Rome feared emotion. The new rule integrates it. Rule 9. Order serves people. Order stops being an end in itself. Rules exist to reduce harm, not suppress expression. Stability is measured by well-being, not silence. Quiet doesn't automatically mean healthy anymore. Rule 10. Identity is more than records. People are recognized as complex beings, not files. Data supports life instead of defining it. Bureaucracy becomes a tool, not a barrier. Rome reduced people to status. The new system restores individuality. Rule 11. Tradition is optional. Traditions are kept because they add meaning, not because they demand loyalty. This transforms culture from obligation into participation. Rule 12. Change is normal. Perhaps the most radical rule of all. Change stops being treated as failure. It becomes expectation. Rome feared change because it threatened control. The future expects it because it ensures survival. The transition is messy. This shift isn't smooth. Old rules still exist. New ones conflict with them. Confusion is common. Resistance is loud. Rome's habits don't disappear quietly. They linger. Why this feels like instability? When inherited rules dissolve, it feels like uncertainty. But uncertainty isn't collapse. It's recalibration. Rome taught people that stability meant sameness. We're learning that stability means adaptability. The direction is clear. The world isn't becoming less organized. It's becoming differently organized. Less rigid. Less symbolic. Less inherited. More intentional. After thousands of years, ancient Rome still lives, not in marble ruins or faded texts, but in the invisible rules that shape every day of our lives. We stand when we're told, dress the way we're told, work the hours we're told, and obey rituals whose origins we barely remember. Rome doesn't exist anymore, but its habits do. What Rome left behind. Rome's rules were brilliant for their time. They created order, maintained power, and kept an empire functioning across continents and centuries. They optimized obedience, minimized chaos, and standardized human behavior. But the cost was subtle. Autonomy, comfort, creativity, humanity. We inherited the efficiency without questioning the morality. We inherited the structure without questioning the purpose. We continue to obey rules that no longer serve us, because habit feels safer than freedom. Recognizing the invisible chains. The first step in outgrowing Rome is awareness. Every time we follow a rule we can't explain, we reinforce a system designed for someone else's priorities centuries ago. Every time we hesitate to question authority, delay innovation, or accept discomfort as virtue, we honor a tradition that was never intended to maximize human potential. Rome's influence is invisible, but its impact is everywhere, because it trained generations to accept certain behaviors as normal. The rules we're breaking. And yet, change is already happening. People are questioning authority instead of obeying blindly. Work is being redefined as outcome over presence. Education is moving from rote memorization to curiosity and creativity. Leaders are learning that empathy is more powerful than intimidation. Traditions are being evaluated, not blindly followed. Time, rest, and human needs are finally being considered essential, not optional. The rules are being rewritten, one small decision at a time. The invisible revolution. The revolution isn't loud. It doesn't need armies, riots, or decrees. It is quiet, invisible, personal. It happens when a student asks why a lesson matters. It happens when an employee refuses to stay late for no reason. It happens when a leader admits a mistake. It happens when someone decides that rest, comfort, and humanity are worth more than tradition. Rome didn't anticipate this. It couldn't. Its rules survived only when unquestioned. But once the rules are seen clearly, their power fades. Outgrowing Rome. The ultimate lesson isn't to reject Rome. It's to outgrow it. We don't need to destroy its legacy to move forward. We simply need to choose what to keep and what to discard. Efficiency, structure, law, civic responsibility, they are worth keeping. But unquestioned obedience, rigid hierarchy, and rituals with no purpose? They belong to the past. Rome's rules shaped us, but we don't need to remain trapped by them. The choice is ours. Every day, we decide whether to follow inherited rules or to question them. We can choose relevance over ritual, flexibility over rigidity, purpose over habit, humanity over history. Rome didn't give us the choice. We do. And once we take it, the empire that still lives quietly in our habits finally loses its power, not through force, but through awareness. By now, it's clear, ancient Rome still lives in invisible rules. But recognizing those rules is only the first step. The next step is learning how to use that awareness. How to live intentionally, rather than being unconsciously shaped by traditions that no longer serve us. Lesson 1. Question before you obey. Rome thrived because people followed rules without asking why. Modern life gives us a choice. Before following a habit, a law, or a social expectation, ask. Does this actually help me? Does this benefit others? Is this tradition serving a purpose, or just inertia? The power lies not in rebellion, but in conscious decision-making. Lesson 2. Redefine authority. Authority should be earned, not automatic. Look at every leader in your life. Teachers, managers, influencers, institutions. Evaluate them by results, ethics, and support, not by title or appearance. Rome assumed leaders were correct. Today, we get to hold them accountable. That's a freedom worth using. Lesson 3. Work for results, not appearance. Roman labor culture measured loyalty, not impact. Modern life allows us to measure work differently. Focus on outcomes. Focus on efficiency. Focus on balance. Rest isn't laziness, it's maintenance. This small shift undermines centuries of conditioning. Lesson 4. Embrace flexibility. Rigid rules are comforting, but they are often unnecessary. Life is more resilient when systems, routines, and schedules adapt to human needs. Work, school, social expectations. Flexibility doesn't create chaos. It creates freedom and productivity. Rome feared unpredictability. We can use it. Lesson 5. Value humanity over tradition. Many Roman rules survived because tradition felt sacred. Now we can choose. Keep what's meaningful. Discard what isn't. Challenge the habits that limit creativity, empathy, and well-being. Tradition is a tool, not a master. Lesson 6. Build systems that serve people. Rome optimized systems for control. Modern life allows us to optimize for humanity. Design your work, education, and social structures to empower people, not to intimidate or restrict them. Consider well-being, fairness, and adaptability as core goals. Lesson 7. Recognize the invisible. The most powerful Roman rules are invisible. They live in your habits, your judgments, your assumptions, your sense of what is normal. Awareness of these invisible rules is the first step toward change. Once you see them, you can decide whether to follow or to improve them. Lesson 8. Small changes have big impacts. Rome's rules persisted for centuries because small habits compounded. Similarly, small conscious choices today can break centuries-old patterns. Question a rule. Rest when needed. Speak up. Choose flexibility. Value results over appearance. These small acts ripple outward, influencing culture far more than large gestures alone. Lesson 9. Freedom is an active practice. Rome never had to teach obedience. It trained it. Freedom isn't automatic. It requires active participation. Daily decisions, repeated over time, shape a life, or a society, that finally escapes invisible constraints. Lesson 10. Be intentional about legacy. Rome's invisible rules survived because they were unexamined. Think about what you're passing on. Traditions? Habits? Beliefs? Choose consciously. Preserve what empowers. Discard what restricts. Build a legacy people can question and improve, rather than inherit blindly. Even after examining Rome's legacy, its invisible rules, and the new ways we are breaking them, one thing becomes clear: awareness alone isn't enough. We need to actively decide how we respond. Otherwise, old habits quietly reclaim control. Reflection 1. Rome was practical, not moral. Rome's rules weren't designed for happiness. They were designed for order, efficiency, and control. Roads, laws, hierarchies, and rituals all serve the empire, not the individual. Understanding this is crucial. It reminds us that rules aren't sacred simply because they're old. Longevity doesn't equal wisdom. When we question inherited practices, we aren't being rebellious, we are being rational. Reflection 2. The invisible empire is psychological. The power of Rome didn't vanish with the fall of the city. Its rules survived in the way people think, behave, and organize society. Standing when told. Respecting authority without question. Enduring discomfort as virtue. Prioritizing appearances over outcomes. These patterns live inside us. They're habits, not truths. Seeing them is the first step. Acting on that awareness is the second. Reflection 3. Small choices make big change. Rome's invisible rules lasted for centuries because habits compound. One person questioning authority doesn't topple an empire, but it begins a ripple. One student who asks why instead of obeying creates curiosity. One manager who values rest over endless work changes culture. Individual awareness, repeated daily, transforms communities and institutions. Practical takeaway 1. Evaluate rules daily. Ask yourself, does this rule serve a real purpose? Does it help me or others thrive? Am I following it because it's right, or because it's expected? Rules that fail these questions are candidates for change. Practical takeaway 2. Redefine success. Rome measured loyalty, endurance, and appearance. Modern life often repeats the same metrics. Redefine success for yourself. Outcome over attendance. balance over exhaustion, creativity over conformity, compassion over hierarchy. This alone begins to break Roman conditioning. Practical takeaway 3. Question authority with respect. Authority doesn't have to be rejected, it just has to earn trust. Leaders, institutions, and systems should be held accountable. Respect is earned, not automatic. Blind obedience is no longer required. Practical takeaway 4. Embrace flexibility and adaptation. Rigid rules are comfortable, but they limit growth. Adapt schedules, processes, and systems to real needs. Value difference, variation, and innovation. Recognize that stability comes from adaptability, not uniformity. Practical takeaway 5. Preserve tradition thoughtfully. Not all Roman practices are bad. Some are useful. Keep what empowers, organizes, or educates. Discard what restricts, punishes, or discourages humanity. Make tradition a choice, not a mandate. Reflection 4. The choice is personal and collective. Breaking Rome's invisible rules isn't only an individual act, it's cultural. Every small choice changes the environment for others. Awareness grows communities. Questioning traditions challenges institutions. Choosing differently can influence entire workplaces, schools, or social systems. Rome survives only if we allow it. The moment we collectively choose relevance, humanity, and intentionality over habit, its influence diminishes. Imagine a world where Rome's invisible rules no longer dominate daily life. Not a utopia, but a world shaped intentionally rather than inherited unconsciously. This is the future that becomes possible when awareness transforms into action. Future Rule 1. Systems designed for people, not power. Rome designed systems to maintain control. Buildings, laws, schedules, and education all existed to manage populations. A post-Roman world designs systems for people. Work supports life, creativity, and health. Education adapts to the learner, not the teacher's authority. Institutions are transparent, accountable, and accessible. Efficiency still exists, but it serves humanity, not the empire. Future Rule 2. Leadership as service. Leaders are no longer feared, but followed because they help. Authority must be earned daily. Decisions are made collaboratively when possible. Empathy and emotional intelligence are as valued as knowledge and strategy. The pedestal of power becomes a platform for service, not a throne of control. Future Rule 3. Freedom as foundation. Rome normalized obedience. The post-Roman world normalizes choice. Traditions exist because they are meaningful. Rules exist because they are useful. People are encouraged to question, adapt, and improve the systems they live under. Freedom isn't optional, it's the baseline. Future Rule 4. Diversity as strength. Rome standardized humans for manageability. The future celebrates difference. Varied perspectives improve problem-solving. Multiple ways of working, learning, and thinking are valued equally. Inclusion becomes a system feature, not a moral afterthought. Uniformity fades. Resilience grows. Future Rule 5. Time serves life. Rome forced time into rigid schedules, punishing natural rhythms. The post-Roman world respects human biology. Flexible work hours. Sleep and recovery prioritized. Productivity measured by outcomes, not clocked hours. Time is a tool, not a ruler. Future Rule 6. Education for thinking, not obedience. Education is curiosity-driven. Mistakes are tools, not punishments. Questions are valued more than memorized answers. Learning adapts to each person's unique way of thinking. Knowledge becomes a skill, not a hierarchy. Future Rule 7. Emotional intelligence is standard. Rome feared emotion. The future integrates it. Empathy guides decisions. Collaboration replaces intimidation. Emotional literacy strengthens communities and workplaces alike. Strength no longer equals silence. Future Rule 8. Technology as empowerment, not control. Rome had no technology, but if it did, it would have used it to monitor and control. In the post-Roman world, technology amplifies human potential. Automation frees people from meaningless labor. AI and tools support decision-making, not enforce obedience. Communication bridges gaps instead of enforcing hierarchy. Tools serve humans, not the other way around. Future Rule 9. Traditions are choices, not chains. Culture thrives without unexamined rules. Meaningful traditions are preserved. Obsolete practices are discarded. Society evolves continuously, not mechanically. History becomes a guide, not a cage. Future Rule 10. Awareness is power. The invisible empire only survives when unseen. The post-Roman world embraces awareness. People recognize inherited rules. Questioning is normalized. Choices are conscious, not automatic. The true revolution is internal, and that shapes external reality. In this world, work supports life. Leaders serve communities. Education nurtures thinkers. Freedom is standard. Traditions are intentional. Awareness governs behavior. Rome's empire fades, not destroyed, but outgrown. And the remarkable part, this world isn't impossible. It starts with small, deliberate choices today. The question is simple. Do you continue following rules designed for an empire long gone? Or do you start living intentionally, shaping a post-Roman world of your own making? The empire's shadow may be long, but its hold is not unbreakable. The future is waiting. We've traced ancient Rome's rules across centuries, seen their influence in modern life, and imagined a post-Roman future. Now, it's time for the final step, action. Not abstract reflection. Not quiet observation. Real, everyday choices that break centuries-old habits and reclaim freedom. Notice the invisible. Rome's rules are subtle. They live in habits, rituals, and expectations you've never questioned. Do you follow a rule without understanding it? Do you respect authority automatically? Do you measure yourself by work, appearances, or endurance instead of results? Recognition is the first act of rebellion. Awareness is the foundation of change. Question everything that feels automatic. Ask yourself, why do I do this? Who benefits from this rule? Does it still make sense today? Rome's power lasted because nobody asked. You have the privilege and the responsibility to ask. Redefine authority and respect. Respect is earned, not inherited. Challenge ideas without disrespecting people. Hold leaders accountable. Follow guidance when it serves you, not just because of rank or title. Rome feared questioning authority. Today, it strengthens society. Work for life, not the other way around. Stop glorifying exhaustion. Prioritize outcomes, not time spent. Integrate rest, recovery, and balance. Measure success by fulfillment, not mere endurance. Rome rewarded presence. Modern life rewards results. Choose traditions intentionally. Not all rules are bad. Some are useful. Others are unnecessary relics. Keep what adds value. Discard what restricts creativity, humanity, or growth. Transform habit into choice. Rome demanded obedience. You can demand relevance. Embrace curiosity and flexibility. Rigid structures limit life. Flexibility empowers it. Adapt schedules, routines, and rules to human needs. Encourage diverse thinking. Value creativity and innovation over uniformity. Rome standardized humans. You can adapt to humans. Prioritize humanity over habit. Life without reflection is a life lived for someone else, often a centuries-dead empire. Value emotional intelligence. Foster empathy and understanding. Choose people over procedures. Let compassion guide decisions, not tradition. Rome ruled through habit. You can rule your life through intention. Make small changes, repeated daily. Rome's rules survived because small habits compounded over generations. Question one rule today. Take one action differently. Rest, speak up, or choose freedom in a small way. The ripple effect grows faster than you think. One conscious decision leads to many more. Live with awareness. Awareness transforms power. Once you see the invisible rules, they no longer control you. Observe, analyze, and decide. Don't let habit dictate behavior. Let purpose guide actions. Rome's shadow fades with understanding. Define your legacy. Finally, think beyond yourself. What rules, habits, and values will you pass on? Will your legacy be obedience or intention? Will you teach awareness and choice, or unexamined tradition? Rome's empire lasted because it lived in people's habits. You can ensure your influence lasts because it empowers, not restricts. The empire is gone. Its emperors are dust. Its roads crumble. Its rituals are outdated. But its rules, invisible and subtle, linger. The choice is yours. Follow them unconsciously, or step into freedom consciously. Every act of awareness. Every conscious choice. Every intentional action. These are the tools that finally break the empire's hold. Rome may have built the rules. You get to decide which survive, and which fade forever. The future isn't inherited. It's chosen. And that choice begins now.